But man, I'm so glad that you do this stuff for us, Will.
I'm
Yeah, man,
glad
you're
this
great
is
with this stuff.
what I do with my job, so it's like really easy for me.
God, I'm not good with that crap. So
All right. 3, 2, 1. Hello and welcome to the first ever video format edition of the Same Old Stripes podcast, but it's another Same Old Stripes podcast nonetheless. Coming to you the day after the Bengals fall in the Meadowlands 25-22 in their second preseason game. Fall to 0-2 on the preseason, but as we know, wins and losses this time of year doesn't really matter. What we're more looking for is the impact of different guys who shine or don't shine. So, to talk about that, we've got the full cast on hand today. We're going to talk about what we liked and didn't like. And we've got T.O. and Billy here for the first ever video edition of the Same Old Stripes podcast. But I didn't even tell you that because you guys can see it in front of your face. But if you're listening, we still thank you for listening. But T.O., Billy was at the game last night, so I'm going to ask him a little bit more in detail about what he saw. But how was your weekend, man? How's life right now?
weekend was good, man. I got to spend some time with my son, so that's always a good thing. Also, if you hear like a squeaking sound, it's my computer chair. It's not my butt. So I'm doing pretty well though.
Well, I'm glad to hear you're doing well. Always glad to hear that you're getting some time to hang out with Finley. But Billy took the opportunity for all of us to get down and see the Bengals in person, which you did a couple weeks ago, T.O., and you saw them on the practice field. Obviously, not a whole lot of starters playing, but Billy, you were at MetLife Stadium last night. Just give me kind of, how you're doing, but also, what you got to see, and just tell us a little bit about your experience down at MetLife, because I know it's a place you got to go last year, and it's a place you've been a lot, but just go right ahead.
Yeah, definitely, man. First off, good to talk to you guys. As always, man, when the Bengals come to New York or New Jersey or anywhere on this East Coast, I really try to make a stab to get to a game. So couldn't really pass it up, preseason or not. Funny background story here. I purchased a one ticket second row in the opposite side of where the Bengals warming up, and at the Secaucus, New Jersey Transit train station, met a guy named Keith who had an extra ticket in row one on the Bengals side. So we actually sat together for the game, which was pretty cool. Really cool dude. I threw him a T-shirt, and he threw us a follow, which is pretty cool. But it was what it was. And we got in there about like 5:15 or so for warm-ups. Dude, Joe just makes some throws, man. Like, he just looks like he's not even trying, and the ball goes 50 yards. It's just kind of insane. I think we were all kind of concerned or watching the one matchup was Cordell Volson, which I think in my opinion, passed with really flying colors. A couple other positions. Obviously, we'll talk about Dax Hill. Fellas, he's really good. Like, he's no joke good. And I had a tweet out to Zim last night. You could say what you want about the safety room if Jesse comes back, which I think we were all in agreement that he will.
Yep.
I think the time for table is he probably would have to get in within the next 3 to 4 days to play week one, in my opinion, just because of how everything falls. But they played a lot of single high safety with Dax Hill in there just because they didn't really have the personnel to do otherwise. Obviously we look at the pick, but the play that stands out to me is the drive before on 3rd and 6 or 3rd and 5, I believe. He makes a run, fellas, about 15 yards across the field and make a shoestring tackle to force a 4th down. He is legit. He's definitely more than capable of it being him and Von Bell. And I just think if you add Jesse Bates to the mix here, I don't. If you want to show me a better, maybe some better names out there, but if you want to show me pound for pound a room, give me 3 guys that match up better than those 3 guys in the NFL. I don't think you'll find it. So it was good, man. I stayed till half. Watched the rest of the second half on my phone, but it was great to kind of see our guys and see the motivation and truly, man, I told you guys they're having fun, dude. It was a little bit of a, we did a little tailgating in the beginning. A lot of Giants fans are like, oh, didn't know if Daniels was playing, if Blake Martinez was playing, all these guys are playing. They ended up playing almost a half, which kind of surprised me a little bit. But you can just like kind of tense. You can feel it. It's way different. They felt like how I kind of felt when I went to Washington last year with the no Joe Burrow in the preseason, What is Jamar Chase? What are some of these guys? They play. I mean, week 2 the preseason is essentially now the week 3 that we used to have with only 3 games, and they played a lot of their guys. They really kind of needed to, and the Bengals did it, man. It's the luxury of being AFC champions. So I'll continue with the theme of it was a great day to be around some Bengal fans, be around our boys, but no sweat. So the no sweat off season continues.
So you make a good point there. Unlike the Giants, the Bengals are in a position where this isn't some terrible firestorm where we're waiting around and hoping for the day that we see the offense come along or the defensive starters come along. No, there's none of that going on with the Bengals right now. Starters aren't going to play. Most of those guys that you're going to see starting are going to be their preseason work is all going to come this week in their preseason or their joint practices with the Rams. We're going to have Anand Naduri on later this week to talk about that. You guys remember him from being a part of our Super Bowl preview show. So we'll have him back on. But I want to start in an area that Billy touched on at the beginning of his kind of conversation first. And it's not Daxton Hill. We'll get there eventually. But I think that everyone that's listening to or watching this show had Cordell Volson on the mind entering that game. It probably kept their eyes focused on left guard throughout. And if that's what you're looking for, you got a lot of it. Cordell Volson played all 61 snaps with the Bengals offense. Him, Hakeem Adeniji, and Trey Hill, all 3 of them looked pretty good based on the eye test. All 3 of those guys played 100% of the offensive snaps, but obviously the conversation we're going to have today is about Cordell Volson. Billy, you said he passed the test with flying colors. Tio, I'll get more input from you in a second, but for my eye test, he did as well. Pro Football Focus was not as kind in some grading that just came out. He was given a 26.5 pass blocking grade, 13.2 pass blocking grade in true passing sets, and a 69.4 run blocking grade. That comes with 3 pressures, 2 hurries, a sack, and a penalty. Frankly, it sounds like the run blocking was once again incredible. The pass blocking was shaky, but I didn't think it was as bad as the grading showed. I thought that he was a lot more stable than that. And
if I could add a quick PFF criticism, as I always have, who was quarterbacking and who the hell are they throwing the ball to? I think that was one of the biggest things. Like sitting there watching, Giants fans kind of talking crap all night. It's like, dude, you're playing Daniel Jones until 3 minutes left in the second quarter. But Brandon Allen again wasn't much for the eye, and 2 really wasn't throwing the ball to anybody. So I'll definitely back Volson up on that, right? I think that contributed to a lot of the hurries and even some of the penalties in the first quarter and second quarter, but his run block was legit.
So 2 plays that stand out to me were back-to-back plays. It's a play where it's pretty clear that him and Trey Hill have some sort of miscommunication, but it looks like it's Volson's fault. They run into each other. I think it leads to a run stuff. And the next play, he misses an assignment on a blitz, gets a free shot on Brandon Allen, which results in a sack. Frankly, if those are the 2 snaps that you're going to take all with, I'm okay with that. Because when you're going to put, theoretically, Volson out there next to Jonah or between Jonah Williams and between Ted Karras, that alone is going to give you a lot more, room for communication and conversation and figuring things out than you're going to have with just, Hakeem Adeniji and Trey Hill back there, who in all likelihood aren't going to play a whole lot of regular season snaps if everything goes to plan. But, in general, I think last night we got a pretty positive sample size from Cordell Volson. Billy, do you want to give any additional Volson thoughts, and then we'll get to T.O.?
I think he was very solid. Something I kind of picked on in warm-ups as they're about 5 feet away from us was, Kappa, Karras, and Jonah really working with him on some one-on-one stuff. I think they only carried, I think I counted 8 offensive linemen they had dressed last night. So you kind of knew it was pretty much a dress rehearsal for him. So I was going when I saw that, I knew he'd probably play pretty much the whole game, which he ended up doing. I'll add it, and it won't be about Volson. If there's one concern about this team, I said to my dad that day, there's 2 concerns about the Bengals not getting back to Super Bowl, in my opinion. One is internal, one's external. External, I'll be completely honest, it's the Buffalo Bills. I lose a lot of freaking sleep over Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills. Second, and I think it's an Achilles heel of this team and a lot of teams in the NFL, but it's not a 1-year fix. There's no depth on this offensive line. If we have an injury on the outside, it's going to be tough, fellas. Like, Keem Adeniji and Dante Smith are not – they should not be playing outside.
I would just like to – I thought Smith was particularly disappointing yesterday.
It's 3 holding calls in 13 minutes of football. I mean, it's something that lingers in my mind a ton when it comes to them, man. I really just I hope and pray it doesn't come back and bite them. And it's funny, I mentioned to you guys, Duke Tobin's walking past me and the guy I was with, and about 15 Bengal fans don't see him. And I yelled out to Duke, "What's up, Duke? Thanks for bringing us back." And he gave us a little hang loose, and he replied, "Job's not done," which I loved. I think Duke has done a great job, especially on this line, but it's not a 1-year fix, man. This is I think Cordell Volson's a great pickup. Obviously, like as it looks now, like it looks like Jackson Carman's a miss, but like they have to look into rounds 3 through 6, finding a couple of guys that could just be serviceable, because they really, that's our one Achilles heel. I think, man, we go down with an injury on the outside. There's not much around there, man.
Yeah, I think you make an excellent point there, Billy. I mean, the depth thing is going to be – it's something we've kind of talked about all offseason, I feel like. I mean, it's something it's not been a mystery to us that it's a little concerning. But T.O., I'll let you go ahead. And, you could start here with Volson, but if you want to hit on some of the other line depth concerns, that's totally fair. But, I mean, at the end of the day, I think the Volson being – whether it's a long-term depth piece or over the next 5 years or so, or a long-term starter – it does to me look like the Bengals have something. Do you see it that way as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I'm not going to say I loved his performance as much as maybe you guys did. I thought he was a big step above Carman, in my opinion. I think Carman, when he was out there that first week, he was just getting torched and just killing the offense. So yeah, but I am excited, and that's why I texted you guys and I said these reps are so important for him, because he needs to see how he was getting beat a few times, like on that blitz, which he has done a really good job, I think, of covering like stunts and twists and whatnot from the defensive line, and so that's what I'm excited about, because what was our biggest thing last year? It was always getting killed on the twists and stunts and whatever. So it seems like he has pretty good awareness. Even on that one, he got beat by that cornerback. He saw it late, which is fine. But like I said, those reps are so important for him, because he needs to see it. Just like Thibodeau taking that low block on by Thad Moss. The announcers even said it's probably not going to happen to him again, because he's going to learn from it. Same thing with Volson. He needs to learn. I mean, I wish I could say I trust Carman more, but so yeah, I'm right with you guys. I'm excited about Volson. One other point I'll bring up, and it's crazy. I heard it on Hear That Podcast Growling last night, and they were saying, what if the Eagles called you and said, "Hey, Dickerson for Jesse Bates"? What do you say about that? Tough.
I probably say no, because I think that having Jesse Bates in 2022 gives you more of a chance to win the Super Bowl than having Landon Dickerson does.
I think you're kind of right. I think long term the better play would be Dickerson, but short term definitely Bates. Could you imagine that 3 safety look? It's gonna be ridiculous.
Oh man, and we'll get to Daxton Hill in a second, but after what we saw from Daxton last night, I have no hesitation there.
I got to add one thing when it comes to this, and we were all 3 of us heavy on this guy last year, and rightfully so. He was on a hot seat. Let's call it. Zach was on a hot seat.
Yeah,
and he got off that hot seat by winning the AFC Championship. I have to add, and I don't want to be that negative guy in the pod, but I'm going to be that negative guy in the pod. Jackson Carman falls on him. If in my opinion, I think a lot falls on Zach, and like somebody's got to take the heat at some point, right? If this doesn't work out and this causes us to lose the Super Bowl,
Oh, yeah.
or not get back or cause us to lose in a wild card round. Like, that's an issue. Like, somebody's got to pay for that, in my opinion, because it hasn't worked out.
Yeah. So here's what I know about that. Jackson Carman, very much a front office pick. They reached out to their consultants. They have names they like, including Paul Alexander and Willie Anderson, who were very much in the Carman camp. The Cordell Volson pick was all Frank Pollock. That's the guy that Frank Pollock scouted a series of guys, and Bengals said, this is the group of guys we're looking at, and Volson was the guy that Pollock circled. So what it says to me is that the Bengals front office, and whether they've now recognized this or not, probably have either learned or need to learn that the person coaching the position is the person that needs to be involved in the conversation. Because by all accounts, it doesn't sound like Frank Pollock was involved in the decision to draft Jackson Carman at all, which he was a new face to the staff at that point, so it kind of makes sense. But it is an interesting piece of nuance. And sure, some of it's on Zach, because Zach has the ability to step in and say, hey, I don't think this is going to fit what we do. We're looking for leaders, and he doesn't have the traits that, check all those boxes. But it has to fall on someone, because this has not gone well. And it's clearly at a boiling point with Frank Pollock. And apparently, this is reported also on the Hear That Podcast Growling, but it looks like Carman's getting kicked out of drills and stuff in addition to being moved to third string. And that you can't do that as a second-year player. It doesn't work. So, any other thoughts there from anyone, or are we good on Jackson Carman for now?
No, I'm with you. I think you were right. I think it was Frank Pollock coming in a little late. That's why he probably didn't have a say in that Carman pick, but maybe not trust the front office picking offensive line. It hasn't really worked out. So
yeah, it's been a problem. It's been a weak spot for them, but an area that's clearly not a weak spot right now for them. Identifying safety talent, not a problem in Cincinnati. I think that's where we have to go now, guys. I mean, a little bit of a mixed bag of a performance from Cordell Volson, which is probably disappointing to some, but guys, we got to talk about Daxton Hill, because after making some nice, a little bit of an up and down, but mostly positive preseason debut, yesterday, Daxton Hill was just phenomenal. I mean, for a guy at his age, I think he's a young 22-year-old player, to come into the league, fly around the field, make big hits, and make, first down eliminating tackles. It says a lot. So Daxton Hill, in totality, 6 tackles and an interception. The interception was obviously on a tip ball, but it showed good ball skills from him to identify it before it hit the ground and scoop it up. Nice little run back. But T.O., I know you don't have a whole lot of time, so I'll let you start first. Your impressions of Daxton Hill yesterday. I mean, how impressed are you with him, and how much better do you feel about the outlook of the Bengals safety room going forward, just given what we've seen so far and everything we've heard about, just the incredible athleticism he's displayed?
Yeah, I think it's hilarious that my hot take was that you guys asked me what's my worst case scenario, and I said Dax Hill. But it wasn't because of the player. It was because Jesse Bates.
Yeah.
And can you imagine having all the field? It's going to be – I don't see a scenario where Dax Hill's not on the field. I don't care where it's at. His biggest flaw is tackling. He looks like an elite tackler. He's the fastest player on the field, and that's against the Giants starters. And it's not close. He's fast, man. I just have so many thoughts in my head about that 3 safety package, putting Vaughn down in the box, putting Dax in the slot, putting him up top, putting Jesse everywhere. It's going to be crazy. I think he's going to provide a new element to our defense and teams. Oh man, I almost reached out to Ravens community on Twitter yesterday. Just wanted to ask him, and this is serious. I wanted to ask him how Kyle Hamilton's looking. And it wasn't to be cocky or anything, but I think we got the best safety in the draft. And he's the best player on the field. And it's pretty obvious to see that tackle that he made was stupid. That was stupid closing speed. You shouldn't have that. But I'm excited, man. I'm excited about what we can do with them.
Yeah, having a guy that literally looks like he's getting shot out of a cannon every time he runs, it's really nice. And At this point, the Bengals do have to kind of ask if they got the best safety in the draft because Kyle Hamilton, it's preseason and it's his first year, so there's a lot to learn. This will be a very different conversation this time next year about what these guys are becoming, but Kyle Hamilton's looked a little flat-footed and didn't have the track speed that Daxton Hill came into the draft with. So I think that's a worthwhile nugget from UTO. I mean, Kyle Hamilton, for all the praise he got, we probably got to be talking about Daxton Hill as maybe the best safety in this class. So Billy, I'll let you jump in from there. How did it look in person? Was it as impressive as we all saw?
It was impressive, fellas. Even in warmups, man, he's a quick son of a gun, man. And it's funny, like, you know, on TV, he kind of looks like a little, I don't want to say smaller guy, but he's kind of jacked, man. He's a little bit, I would say, a little bit bigger than like a Mike Hilton, which I like. And I'll bring 2 points here. I think there could be a scenario, I think, when Jesse just comes out and if he just balls and Barnes is playing well, he would be a phenomenal guy on the punt return team. So he's going to get snaps no matter what. So that's one I kind of picked out. And 2, a guy that I thought was super effective for the Bengals in this run. Where does Trey Flowers fit in here? Because to be honest, like, Dax is big enough to guard to call tight ends. Like I think he tackles well enough. He has the size. I mean, I was there for the first half last night. I don't know what Trey Flowers' snap count was, but it couldn't have been high. Like, I think Dax played the first quarter. I think a little bit into like maybe like 4 or 5 minutes left in the first quarter, but huge on Dax, huge on what he can bring, and I think the word that we've been using is perfect for it. It's versatility, man. He's versatile. He can get after tackles in the open field, like Tio said. He's a ball hawk, and yeah, I think that Lou's going to use him in a lot of different ways. I made a statement yesterday as you kind of work through the second stringers. This may be one of the deepest defenses in the NFL. I think they've one section I think really would bar to that point, especially now with Cam out, would be probably corner. But I don't think there's a deeper safety group. I think our linebackers are as solid as they could be at this point. Akeem Davis-Gaither was out there on special teams and running around like a lunatic last night, all hitting everything that moved. And I mean, this front seven is no joke, dude. Like, having guys like Zach Carter, a guy I want to talk about later too. Zach Carter and Cam Sample are going to get a ton of reps, dude. You're just cycling guys in, man. Khalid Kareem, who's we've seen his ability obviously in Denver last year. Joshua Osai, who I'll talk a little about too later, is raw as can be, but it's just Jeff Gunther. Like, there's just guys circling in, circling out. You're going to have a ton of matchup issues for offensive lines going forward.
So I know we're about to lose T.O., so I'll give him the chance to fill in any thoughts he has on the Bengals' depth on defense, because we're going to go to the linebacker conversation. But, T.O., anything you want to add about your thoughts on the depth of this defense at this point?
Yeah, I think I don't want to see Akeem Davis-Gaither playing in the preseason, man. I think he's our second best linebacker, and I don't know if that's a hot take or what, but I don't want to see him playing. I don't understand why he is playing, especially with his injury history. It's like, let's keep him healthy through the regular season, right? Like, I'd much rather see Jermaine Pratt playing in the preseason, but I don't want any of those guys playing. I just don't think you need it. Linebacker is a banged up position. It's always going to be a banged up position. It's just like, there's no point, man. So I don't know what you got to do. If you got to play safeties down in the box, right? I don't care. Figure it out. Just don't play them. But yeah, I think our depth's okay. I think, a concern I have is our defensive line again. Outside of Trey Hendrickson, he's really the only proven pass rusher on the team. Joseph Tsai hasn't looked as explosive as he did in the first preseason.
That fourth down run stop was pretty nice. I'll give him that.
Huge, but I don't know who said it. I think it was you last night, wasn't it? You said he's super raw still.
I think I said that. Someone said that, but it's not a super hot take, I don't think.
No. So, I think he's going to play an important role, and I think he'll grow as the season. But, expecting maybe 10 sacks out of him might be a little bit high.
Yeah.
Maybe 5, 6. That would be maybe more his range. But I think we'll be fine as long.
Before you run, Tio, I got a hot take I want your answer on. I think the number is way down sacks this year from last year, and I don't think it is in a bad way. I think it's a different type of defensive group, but I don't see them getting as many sacks as they did last year. I don't think it kind of comes close, to be honest.
That's interesting. I feel like maybe the coverage might be better this year, so maybe we'll get some more coverage sacks. But yeah, that's interesting.
I actually kind of disagree. I think they're going to have a significant amount more sacks. And I would also like to point out that I was right on the sacks last year. You guys went under a certain amount, and I was way right on the over.
You killed us with the over last year. You did.
I was super low on Trey Hendrickson, so I've had 2 bad takes, man. A few really bad takes.
So Billy, let's talk about Cam Sample here too, because this is a good spot for it. We can kind of talk about some of the Bengals defensive line stuff I was going to bring up later, but the way I see it, T.O.'s got to go. That's his school bell, folks. So we'll catch up with him later this week or next week. Who dat, brother? So the reason I'm so optimistic about the sack number, the way I see it, I don't see as many opportunities for guys to fill up there's no Larry Ogunjobi replacement I think is going to stack up that number. But I think when you look at the overall breadth of what this defensive line is, I see a lot of guys that can have between 3 and 7 sacks as opposed to having between 8 and 12. And when you have, I think Carter's good for 3 to 5. I think Gunter's probably good for 2 to 5. I think that BJ Hill is going to have more than he had last year. I think Hendrickson will maybe be the same, somewhere in the same cluster. Hubbard's probably around the same cluster. Someone's going to get hurt, but like Tio said, I think the secondary is going to be even better and tighter and just overall more just on the same page. So I just think that continuation creates more coverage sacks. What has you down on the sacks thing in general?
So I'll tell you something that I kind of picked on what the Giants did yesterday. I know it's a little bit different. The Giants have no receivers playing, and they really don't have any receivers on that roster, by the way. But I think teams are just going to try to dink and dunk on us a ton, and I think it's going to be very similar to a 2015 Cincinnati Bengals defense where they're going to give up yards, and I don't think it's probably going to be by design, to be honest. They're going to be defending the red zone a decent amount. But I just see it that it's such a bend don't break kind of defense. I think, and correct me, I want to hear what you think on it. I think the best part of this defense here is what they can do in the red zone, because I think when you enclose, we always talk about, when you get into the red zone, you get that 1st and goal, you want something within 4 to 5 yards, because that 6-7 yard marker, you don't get any yards in the first 2 downs. Your 3rd and goal at the 7 or 8 is probably the worst down you can have. And I just think that they have such good linebacking and safety crews that I think that it's really going to be a lot of dig and duck, a lot of aspects of teams kind of getting to the red zone and them just holding to a ton of field goals, man. I could tell you just from the couple, red zone stance they had yesterday, it was just, and obviously you're not playing everyone up front, but it seems like Lou's willing to give up, certain yardage and certain things to certain teams, which I think, especially if you look who they play the first couple weeks. I mean, do you see Mitch Trubisky throwing many passes over 15 to 20 yards? No. Same thing with Dak. No. I mean, if it's Mike White, same thing. Dink and dunk. You just got to be able to hold the fort when you get down there. And I just really think that, I don't take it. I don't want it to come out as kind of a knock to the guys. I think they're a better defense than they were last year. I just think that this defense reminds me so much about the 2015 team, where they're going to give up yards. They're going to go chunk plays at times, but they're not going to give up many touchdowns in the red zone.
So you make an interesting point there, and we're getting a little away from the preseason game, but I think that's fine. I think that everyone kind of understands what the preseason game is at this point in their lives. Interesting numbers I wanted to pull up pertinent to the conversation we're having now, Billy. Looking at the 2021 Bengals, areas where they were, let me phrase it this way. While the Bengals finished the season, they were 16th, I believe. Yeah, 16th as a scoring defense at 22.2 points per game. Their red zone touchdown percentage was 22nd in the NFL, which it's not that good. They allowed touchdowns in the red zone on 61.2% of occasions. So I do wonder, and it did look like that last night. It looked a little bit more like that Paul Gunther style bend don't break defense that they were so, Mike Zimmer the same way. But I think that's almost more important for this team to be able to kill you in the red zone, to be able to kill you when you're dying for 7 and you can only take 3.
Yep.
So I think guys like, and we can talk, let's transition to Cam Sample here, but I think he's a guy that helps you there.
Yeah.
He's a guy that doesn't need to play every day or doesn't play third downs. He's your first and second down rotational edge rusher.
Yep.
But he can blow up runs. He can, chew out a screen. He can, get back into the field a little bit and stop a runner for a gain of 4 instead of a gain of 9. Give me your impressions on Cam Sample and how he'll help this defense in 2022. I just know that's someone that stuck out to you and someone that's going to really help with this bend don't break philosophy if that's what they're going to use.
100%. I thought Cam was great. I think Cam is great for what he does. I think he knows his role. I think he's really bought into his role. A guy that I like last year, who I kind of see him taking more of those snaps than he really had last year, is Khalid Kareem. I kind of see him kind of filling that role a little bit. And listen, to go back to the kind of bend don't break philosophy, I was talking to the guy I was sitting with yesterday, and we were just talking about progressions, right? And he talked about how, obviously being the 4th seed and the draw we got in the playoffs helped us get to the Super Bowl. I think the next progression for this team is to have home field in the playoffs, and that's nothing. It's just a progression as it goes, right? You got to look at how this league is kind of formatted, right? When you're a 1 seed and you win your division, who are the other 2 non-division? If you don't play that same division in the AFC, who do you play? Play the number 1 teams in the division. Right? If you look at how New England kind of sustained that run for so long, obviously they go 5-1 in the division, but they're playing Indianapolis every year, right? They're playing Denver and Peyton Manning every year. And those are those type of games. You're not going to blow Peyton Manning out on the road or at home. Doesn't matter, right? You're not going to blow Kansas City out on the road at home. You're not going to blow Buffalo out week 17. That's going to be a grit and grind type of game. And just to bring it back to a guy like Cam Sample's not going to fill a stat sheet every single week. But what he will do, he'll give you the same effort level week 17 on a January night at Paycor when it's probably win and you. Depending on seed, we hope for it to be winning depending on seeding. And could be snow, could be 15, 20 degrees. He's going to give you that same type of mentality and same type of rotational piece every week. So I love the fact, and I bring the word up, depth is you're going to need it, man. We haven't had depth, I think, up front like this in a while. And I foresee it being one of those seasons where like game week 16, week 17, 18, that's going to matter. If you saw what they did on NFL Network the other day, they had them win 4 in a row. I think it was the New Orleans, Cleveland, Atlanta, Carolina stretch. I think they had them beating Pittsburgh on a Sunday night after the bye, and they had them losing like 4 in a row after that, which is very possible. You got Tennessee, Tampa Bay, Baltimore, Sprinkle back in there. I mean,
you got to play New England on Christmas Eve
on my birthday. That's going to be a tough game. Yeah. You figure New England's probably scratching and clawing at that point to stay alive in a wild card race. So you're going to be needing to play your best football in December and January. And to me, what I saw from the team last night, especially on the defensive side, they're loading up with guys who aren't going to fill stat sheets, aren't going to play a ton of downs in the beginning of the year. But when it comes December, it comes January, and it comes winning playoff football, they're going to be able to produce. So Cam Sample's definitely on that list.
Another guy on that list that I want to make sure we bring up, and a guy that I think at this point is now kind of a lock for the roster, even made a big play in last year's playoffs against Tennessee. Clay Johnston, I thought it seemed like every time there was a tackle, it was, number 44 making the play. And it turns out I wasn't crazy. Clay Johnston played 66 defensive snaps for the Bengals. Across those snaps, he made 20 tackles. So about 1 in every 3 plays, Clay Johnston was the man bringing a guy to the turf, which is super impressive. Also had a sack in that game. But I think next to Daxton Hill, he looked like maybe next to Daxton Hill and Cam Sample and a couple other notables, but he was one of those top guys on the Bengals defense yesterday, and a guy that even against the Giants secondary, I thought had a lot of positive plays. Huh. With that said, and a guy that Tio mentioned earlier, I mean, Logan Wilson's hurt right now, and he'll be back. Actually, I think he's fully back in 11 on 11s now that I'm thinking about it.
Yeah, he was doing a lot of stuff yesterday.
Yeah, playoff P will be out there. Akeem Davis-Gaither looked phenomenal in the plays he played.
Yep.
Really small sample size for him, so not a whole lot of action thus far. It's kind of what we expected. But this is a linebacker room now where you have a lot of guys you trust. And T.O. mentioned it. It's a position where guys get banged up all the time. There's always going to be – you're probably going to miss a game if you're a linebacker or, a stretch of games. It's a hard position to stay healthy. I mean, I'm curious how you feel about him and about the group. But, I mean, when you have a group of linebackers like this where everyone seems to be able to step up and, play above average, I mean, how much safer do you feel about the floor of this defense given that group?
I mean, I was when we started this podcast, like I couldn't name you half the guys in that linebacker room last year, and I think they've kind of taken offense to probably people like me and you that have just given it so much of like there's no name guys there. I think Johnson definitely makes this roster, and I'll go forward and just saying they have guys who are just gritty guys, right? Like you look last year, like what Marcus Bailey did on the 4th down in Tennessee. Right, a guy, again, who's not going to produce every week for you. He's going to be throwing his body and hopefully not to break his neck on special teams half the time he's out there. But listen, man, you have a ton of guys, especially in that linebacker group that, I know we use it on the term on an offensive line a ton, but what's the difference between a glass eater on the offensive line and the glass eaters we got in that linebacker room, dude? We got guys that just go out and make plays and they don't really care who makes them. It's kind of the next man up mentality. If your number gets called, you know the scheme. I think we can go back to the older Bengals too, with the Vontaze Burficts of the world, the Vinny Rays, where other than those two guys, did you really have trust in any of those other linebackers to kind of consistently make plays for you? Not much, right? So
Not at all.
I love the depth of it. And I think going forward, it's just something that's going to assist.
It's very nice, in my opinion. And I think the ceiling on that room is so much more encouraging than when we saw it last year, and that's what I think I like about it so much. But Clay Johnston is a guy in particular that stands out to me because, there's always going to be a place for the hyper-athletic guys like JOK up in Cleveland's an example. I mean, he's a physical freak. Isaiah Simmons is an example in Arizona as a physical freak. But just having a guy that could play – outside linebacker and be rangy and tackle when you need him. I just think that's so huge. And having a guy that's not going to miss tackles, that's going to get guys to the turf, that's going to make the play when it matters. I think that's everything that the Bengals have been looking for a long time.
Yeah.
And it makes me feel a lot better about the floor of this defense and the floor of this linebacker crew because I'm sick of the days of Lamar Jackson torching through this defense because the linebackers are just arm tackling.
Right.
And having Johnston doesn't do that.
No.
Wilson doesn't do that. ADG doesn't do that. Pratt doesn't do that. Batchy doesn't do that. Bailey doesn't do that. So they're in good shape. I like that group for this team a lot. We'll get back to – so I know you want to talk about Alan George too because I think he was interesting, but I want to flip back to offense, and I want to talk about – and it's not so much offense as it is special teams again here, but Chris Evans, man. I feel like – talk about shot out of a cannon. It's like the dude came out and has napalm in his shoes in 2022. The 73-yard kick return yesterday was freaky, and if that's what the Bengals are going to be getting in regular season games, then I think we've probably already seen it. But Brandon Wilson's probably done as a Bengal, which is going to open the door for someone else to enter the safety room, which is kind of expected. I think that's going to be Michael Thomas filling in, a veteran guy that has been on this show and we really like. But Billy, you got to see it in person. How was the Chris Evans experience?
So, man, I was like about probably 10 feet away. I was hoping he got in and see if I get like a little love on the touchdown. And he Stanley Morgan, actually, if you see him, Stanley Morgan kind of looks pretty pissed off after the guy that got him. Stanley Morgan kind of let him go a little bit in the end. And he actually got rolled up a little bit on his ankle. I'm happy he kind of hobbled off, but he came back out. Chris Evans is a game changer because I think, I've always been one that you'd rather have like a slot receiver or running back to take kicks back just because of the ability of him to make impacts other than on the special teams. No knock to Brandon Wilson. He did his job and he ran one back as the Giants 2 years ago. But, when you have a safety like that who really can make an impact defensively, you kind of hold on a roster spot for guys just taking kicks back, right? Our guy, DP last year, obviously before the 2 months, but I'm definitely happy with it. I want to bring a name up to you quick that we didn't really talk about, but just quickly. I think Travion makes the team just kind of
Yeah.
for what he does. Jacquizz Patrick is a low dude. I mean, I don't think he makes the roster just off of a number standpoint because I don't see them carrying 5 running backs, and that guy's not lasting the practice squad. Somebody's picking that guy up.
Same thing that happened last year, Dylan.
100%. He reminds me like a Leonard Fournette, dude. He's ripped. But,
big boy. Yeah.
I love Trey. I even like Travion in some aspects of some special packages this year with Joe. I saw it throughout the warm-ups too. Travion's got some decent hands, man. If we can get some Travion in the flat, I'm definitely up for it, definitely a fan. I know not to run through it. I don't know if we touched on it before, but I think we'd be remiss to not talk about a couple of these guys in the receiving core. I would have liked to see a little bit more out of Kendrick Pryor last night. Didn't see much. Do you think, and my question for you would be, do you think you get a Trent Irwin, Trent Taylor both making this roster?
So here's how I kind of view it now. Just taking the information we've gotten over the last couple of weeks and last night, but I think you might have the nail on the head there with Travion Henderson making the roster. That's the Ohio State running back. Travion Williams making the Bengals roster, and here's why. I think that they love what he gives them on special teams, and if anything happens to Mixon, Evans, Pirine, he's
right there.
Be ready to. He fits in. He knows the game. He knows the coaches. The coaches like him. He's going to be ready to go. So I don't know. He could easily be one of those guys that he's never really selected all that frequently on the like the 46-man game day roster.
Right.
But I think they like the idea of him being on the 53-man.
Right.
And let me just couple this with what you're saying. At that point, I don't think you carry 7 receivers.
I don't think so either.
And so that probably looks like, you get the big 3, you'll get Chase, Higgins, Boyd. And then I think you're looking at Thomas, because I don't think Michael Thomas is going to miss the roster. Thomas, receiver. At this point, I think it's
Stanley Morgan's. I think Stanley Morgan's in the team.
He's too valuable on special teams. And then Trent Taylor has been just completely competent as a punt returner to the point where you trust it, and B, made by far the best plays as a wide receiver across the board consistently and throughout these preseason games. And we saw the flashes from Kendrick Pryor in the last game. I even thought Kwame Lassiter looked pretty good at times in this game. But when you have a dependable guy like Trent Taylor, who, by the way, when you make that kind of 4th down catch on that 4th and 1, I can't remember the name of the concept. I think it's called a rail. It's the
right
coming in for the screen.
Great call by the way.
Oh, just the Bengals called it. I think that's the play or similar to the play they called on the one of the game winners or one of the things they used to set up a game winner last year to Uzama, but it was just a little bit different.
I think that was a similar play to Jacksonville, I believe.
Yeah, I think it was.
They threw him on a wheelie.
Yep. So they called that, and Taylor just makes a phenomenal catch. And when you make catches like that against a guy that it's apparently competing for his start, he is the Giants' starting slot corner right now.
Right.
I just think that wins you jobs. I think that there's a good chance we don't even see Trent Taylor in the next game, in my opinion.
Yeah.
They might just. So I think that's your group. I think that's your 6, and I think you keep 4 running backs. And as much.
So what was your 6 again? You had the big 3, right? Mike Thomas, 4.
Stan and Trent Taylor.
So you think Trent Irwin doesn't make it?
I think Trent Taylor or Trent Irwin's pretty far down the. I think Lassiter or Pryor.
Pryor be ahead
because I think Pryor. I think he only had like 3 catches for 5 yards or 3 targets for 5 yards. But
he was 2 for 32. Pryor was 4 for 27 yesterday.
Oh, was he? Well, I remember one that stands out was a first down throw that was just beyond the sticks. Yeah. Very odd and Tate-esque, where throw it and I'm going to figure it out. And no matter who hits me this ball, I'm securing this to the ground. And that stands out to me. That's winning football. That wins your roster spots, but nothing like what Trent Taylor did. And I don't think there's enough snaps for him in this offense for them to even be like, we should take this guy on as just like a potential guy.
See, I'll give you one where I can see them carrying 7, and it's Kwame Lassiter. And yeah, I'll give it to you in this aspect of, like, I love Mike Thomas. He's a workhorse, dude. He was out there for an hour, 15, 20 minutes just working on routes. But if you had to pick right now, God forbid, knock on every piece of wood you have in your office, T. Higgins goes down, who would you rather have replace him, Kwame Lassiter or Mike Thomas? I personally would think Kwame Lasseter just because of the prototype of the body and what he can kind of do going over the middle getting receivers.
I'm typically very conservative on these kind of things. I say the guy with the experience and all that stuff, but I don't really feel that way about this one. I actually think that Mike Thomas does give you a lot of good snaps, but what I saw from Kwame Lasseter yesterday is a guy that can be really dynamic and win in different ways. And especially, I thought that his ability to run in space and create a little panic on the defense was something that fits really, really well with what Joe Burrow likes to do as a quarterback, to get those guys good, well-placed balls and let them cook. Because, I mean, he does throw ball winner kind of throws to T. Higgins and stuff, but he loves to give his wide receivers the chance to make, other people pay.
He gives me 2020. He gives me 2020 Auden Tate vibes a lot of just a guy who's going to go over. Like I think about the catch in London against the Rams, where like he doesn't care about what's going to happen. He's going to go up and get the ball. And I think he's the last fringe guy after seeing what Pryor did last night, and I'd want to see him have a good game next Saturday. But I find it a little hard for you to let him go and let him walk when. Again, like I don't love the depth of Stanley Morgan and Mike Thomas. I like for what they bring to the locker room, what Stanley Morgan can do on special teams. We can't deny that.
He had a bad drop yesterday, though.
Yeah, I know he did. If one of those three goes down, like I'm not saying Kwame Lasseter would come in and would be automatically part of the big three. There'd be a drop off, but I think there's less of a drop off with Kwame Lasseter than there is with Stanley Morgan and Mike Thomas. Just my opinion.
Yeah, and I like Pryor, but everything I've heard and seen from Lasseter, it just seems like there's a little something more there. Like that guy doesn't get undrafted if he plays at LSU instead of Kansas.
Yeah, no way.
Yeah. Last thing, Billy, we're going to talk about before we sign off here, we're going to be giving you guys – it's going to be about a 15-minute show, which I think is about right for us. It's the first one on video, baby.
There you go.
Some of the buzz from yesterday's game is unfortunately – and it's what most of the attention's on right now. Early in the first quarter or halfway through the third quarter, first quarter, Kayvon Thibodeau – kind of surrenders his body as Thaddeus Moss is making a cut block, which is a legal block. It's now revealed that Thibodeau sprained his MCL, which is going to be a 3-week injury for him. Speculation at the beginning was like ACL and stuff, so it's clearly not as bad as it could have been. But much of the backlash has been about, this is a dirty hit. This needs to be taken out of the game. Rich Eisen said fine, suspension, ban at minimum. In my opinion, it's really frustrating to see a guy that's like fighting tooth and nail and making the right play to make the roster, and then to have a bunch of people who have never played the game of football in their life calling for him to, be shot into the sun basically for making a legal play on a guy that's a 5th overall pick, and that's the only reason anyone's mad.
Yeah.
Billy, you listen to a lot of New York sports radio, so I'm sure you have thoughts on this, but why don't you give me your reaction to seeing that and the reaction that's received online?
I'll give you my sight line for it too. That again was right on my sideline. So I'm probably about 15 to 20. I didn't get a clear look because there was a couple of routes being run in front of it. It almost looked initially like he got kind of stuck on the turf. It didn't look like he got hit initially until they ran it back. I think Barstool said this guy needs to be arrested right away, which I'm usually a big Barstool guy, but not really take shots at our Bengals. But it's hard. Like, did it look bad? Yes. And this is where like I was reading the thread that you and Zim had today. Like, as Bengal fans, right? Like everyone's like, oh, if it happened to a Bengal, the Bengals be going crazy. Like, I'm sure if you're a Giant fan, like I wouldn't be happy if it happened to me as a Bengal fan. But like, I think it's one thing to admit that it looks bad, and like the aspect and the way that you're taking it, it looks bad. But what did you want him to do in that situation? Like, I think you had the great perspective on it today. Of I said it before, like shout out to Randy Moss, amazing NFL player, amazing analyst. Thaddeus Moss is not good enough to be tight end here, so he's not.
But he's dying to be.
He's dying to be, and this may be his best chance to make an opening day roster because Drew Sample's hurt. We don't know if he'll be ready for week 1.
Wilcox is out.
This is literally like I'm going to be playing in the CFL or I'm going to be playing in the NFL. So I give it to him, and it's hard. Like, Do I think it was a bad hit? I think it looked really bad. It's like one of those plays in basketball, and the guy comes from behind, he's looking to block you and hit you in the head. It doesn't look good.
Yeah.
Do I think his intentions was to snap every ligament in Kevon Thibodeau's knee? No. But also, like what Tio said, and even the announcers of the Giants said, like, it looked bad, but Carl something, old school Giant, won a couple of championships with him. He's always on the radio, and he even said it on the broadcast. You can literally listen to him. There's a clip. We can cut it of him saying he won't do that again, right? You're leaving yourself vulnerable in that situation. And I don't think if you really, interviewed Thibodeau after, would he say that, Thaddeus Moss is a dirty player, is a dirty hit? No.
Dayball said they do the same thing. Head coach of the Giants, Brian Dayball, said that their fullbacks and tight ends do the same thing.
That's what they're trained to do. I mean, it looks bad, obviously, to the public eye. I think Warren Sapp said this guy should never play football again.
Warren Sharp, not to be confused with the guy that actually football.
Gotcha, Warren Sharp, which kind of – I thought it was Warren Sapp for a second today, too, and I was like, does he know this is Randy Moss's son? And I was like, this is probably not going to go over too well.
Those guys are friends, man.
I said I was going to say, like, this probably won't go over too well. But, I mean – looked bad, yes. Obviously, we don't want to see anyone get hurt in the preseason or get hurt ever. But to give Thaddeus more, I want to say credit, but to put some perspective in it, this is probably his best chance to ever make an NFL roster on opening day. And that guy's going to do anything and everything he can to do so. I mean, you look at, I think there was one other tight end address last night. I couldn't even tell you who it was. Like, Thaddeus Moss is like, he's going to get every rep. He's got to make blocks. He's got to put something on film. What do you want him to do? Lay up and just kind of let Brandon Allen get cross-faced? Like, what do you want in that situation? And that's kind of my whole take on it. I'm definitely with you. I think it's the part of football that we don't like, but it's football. The rules are written how they're written for what it is. No flag. Nothing came down on it. It is what it is. Ref is standing right there, so. Unfortunate. We're happy that he's only out 3 weeks and not longer, and we hope him a speedy recovery. But what do you want him to do?
I think that's a nice way to sum it up, Billy, and I think that's where we'll leave it. So the Same Old Stripes podcast, obviously anti-injury, but pro doing the right thing on the football field. If you're doing it right and you're not trying to hurt people, everything's fine, baby. Thad Moss, no penalty, no suspension, no fine incoming. So sounds like it's no sweat off his back. Kevon Thibodeau. It doesn't sound like he's mad. It sounds like he'll be okay after it doesn't. I mean, he might miss the first week of the season, but he'll be all right in the grand scheme of things. But that's the end of our show for today, man. That's the first video edition of the Same Old Stripes podcast, and I think the 88th overall edition. So if you guys have been listening on the audio the whole time, thanks a whole bunch. If this is your first time watching the video podcast, we sign off a certain way, and so I'll say it again. For Billy and Tio, I'm Willie, and Hooday.
Hooday.
All right.
I know you got to run, but real quick.